After the defeat of France in the Franco-Prussian War, France and Russia began to look at each other for an alliance, which they made. Germany began looking at both nations with tension, and so they prepared a plan. Meanwhile, the French did the same. In this video, we will talk about both of these plans, as well as see the tactics and ideas of both armies, and the actual plans go into action. The Schlieffen Plan, to summarize, was the German plan to win a two-front war. The plan was made by Alfred von Schlieffen. The plan would begin to be drawn up in 1897, 6 years after France and Russia made an alliance. The plan called for Russia to be invaded first, followed by moving the German troops to France. France's invasion was a little tricky. France had a huge fort system on their border, which the Germans predicted would be full of men. That meant that the Germans would have to find another way. An invasion by sea would be almost impossible, so the Germans would have to invade another country. Switzerland was too mountainous. The lowland countries of the Netherlands, Belgium, and Luxembourg would be great. From there, the Germans would give up Alsace-Lorraine to France, only to encircle them and win. Though the original plan was not to invade, it was to ask to move troops through their country. Though invasion was the backup plan. If they did invade, Luxembourg did not have much of an army, and Belgium was expected to hide in their own fortresses. This was the base for the plan until 1905, when the Russians lost a war with Japan. After this, Germany decided to invade France first, and then Russia, predicting that they had 45 days to win the war against France, and then move troops to Russia. There were multiple flaws in this plan, however, which we will cover later. In 1914, Moltke tinkered it one more time by removing the invasion of the Netherlands due to good relations with them. Plan 17 was the French plan for World War I. It would begin to be drawn up in 1898 and would be very inefficient. The plan came with all the wrong lessons, but at first it was very good. The original plan was basically the Schlieffen Plan. The French would invade Belgium like the Germans, while giving up territory for an encirclement, though this plan would get constantly attacked due to France's alliance with Britain. Another factor we will soon cover is that France constantly hated the idea of a defensive war, especially Ferdinand Foch, who wrote The Principles of War and the Conduct of War. In these, he wrote, "The will to conquer sweeps all before it." Because of this, France's generals, such as Joffre, decided not to do an entirely defensive war, even in the face of the Schlieffen Plan. The French did not believe the Germans would invade the Belgians for a number of reasons. The first was the sheer number of forces they believed was needed, and such force would leave Germany to crumble from Russia. Even the French, who in this war made many mistakes, believed the Germans would not make such a stupid decision. The second was the British decision to protect Belgian independence, so the French did not believe they would try to invade all of Belgium. The French predicted that the Germans would invade Lorraine, Luxembourg, and a little part of Belgium, something that would not interfere with Belgian independence. And so, France's forts would slow Germany down, allowing France to retake lost territory with the spirit of its troops. France would then march to Berlin with their Russian counterparts and win the war. So, we have two plans to destroy the enemy. But are they perfect? Also, are the armies quality, or are they behind their times? The German army was actually one of the best in the world, if not the strongest. The artillery was made by Alfred Krupp, who had revolutionized artillery starting in 1812, and had made artillery such as the cast steel cannon produced in 1851, and helped Germany form into a powerful nation. Krupp also helped Germany make an impressive navy, causing them only to be rivaled by the British themselves. The Germans also had one of the greatest navies of submarines, which allowed them to disrupt the Entente shipping. The German army was very experienced in new modern tactics. Germany was also had updated uniforms, unlike the French blue and red, just the gray uniforms which allowed them to be easily be attacked by anything but artillery. All makes it seem like Germany would be able to successfully invade France, but three nations would prove them wrong: Belgium, Russia, and Britain, and possibly Austria. Belgium was expected to retreat to their forts, where Germany could leave a garrison to besiege each, trapping them, leaving their forces unable to be used. They had done the same in the Franco-Prussian War, which made an entire army unable to support Napoleon III and led to his loss at Sedan. But the Belgian armies did not retreat into their well-armed forts, which needed more men, and this led the Germans to be massacred at Liege. But they did win. This caused the Germans' advance to slow. The Russians were originally estimated to take on Germany and Austria by 1917, and so the Germans were scared of their rising power. But still, the Germans expected the Russians to take a month and 2 weeks to be able to launch an attack. This would lead to the plan itself. The Russians actually were able to mobilize faster than the Germans hoped, leading to the German army collapsing and troops being sent over to Russia. Those weren't the only troops coming to the Eastern Front. Austria-Hungary had put most of its troops towards Serbia, allowing Russia to take the northern part of the country. The Germans sent troops to assist a counteroffensive. The UK also sent troops to assist Belgium to keep their independence. The British had the only entirely professional army, though it was smaller. You also need to consider that most nations believed that the war would be quick, though this was not built with no groundwork. The German and Italian Wars of Independence, the Russo-Japanese War, and the Balkan Wars all took about a year. In fact, if either side made better plans, or went into the war thinking it might take a long time, it probably would have been short. Another war that said was going to be quick was the American Civil War. We all know how that turned out. Another thing is that the Germans brought no shovels, and this would soon become important. The French were not better. They had taken notes from the Franco-Prussian War, the worst notes. France took a defensive war as unwinnable and took steps to destroy that idea of a defensive war. In this time, Napoleon's fast tactics of smaller and lighter forces became the idea of French generals, but they forgot about his love of artillery. The 75 was often loved by the commanders as light and maneuverable. The French also underestimated the shells needed for the war, though these guns would become inefficient. The French also saw machine guns as terrible. Sure, they could shoot fast and kill men, but it was on a tripod. This was not for an offensive war. The French even despised the fortress. The French did understand how it was important, though they did not want to repeat Metz. They planned for the forts to stand for a few days, giving the French time for a counteroffensive. So not a lot of men were stationed at the most important forts. Fort Douaumont, the largest concrete structure in the world, was manned by 40 men. The French uniforms also caused problems. The uniforms allowed German artillery gunners to easily attack them. Don't forget that they were plagued by the fast war strategy and knew where Germans were going to attack, but did not care. So when Germany declared war on France on August 3rd, German troops were already in Luxembourg. It had rejected Germany and was invaded on August 1st. Belgium was soon followed, but they did not retreat to their fortifications, instead fighting Germany head-on. With this, the British gave the Germans an ultimatum, which Germany refused, which led to the UK joining the war. Belgium would begin to fall, however, and soon Germany was in France. Belgium, Flanders, and Antwerp did survive for a little while, however, and the Belgians began guerrilla warfare. In response, the Germans began atrocities that the Entente used as propaganda. The French finally began their invasion into Alsace-Lorraine on the 7th, though this would not last the month. When the British arrived, the Belgians and French had been pushed back. The British slowed them down at Mons, but it was not enough. But at this point, Russia had mobilized faster than Germany expected. Russia invaded Austria and East Prussia, leaving Moltke moving tons of troops towards the eastern front for Austria and themselves. France was able to abandon German territory, and with some cab cars, somehow saved Paris at the Marne. Germany would win at Tannenberg, but the Schlieffen Plan had failed. The Western Front stopped being a war of motion, but instead a war of trenches. This would not change until